May 7th, 2025. Just think about that date for a moment. It really hit the headlines like a thunderclap, didn't it?
It absolutely did.
Operation Sindoor, a name that, I mean, now just carries this immense weight. India's response to something truly awful, the Pahalgam attack back on April 22nd.
Just 15 days before. A lifetime in news cycles, but so close.
Exactly, 15 days. And that attack, just a wave of terror crashing down in Jammu and Kashmir.
Yeah.
26 lives lost.
26 people, mostly tourists, looking for peace, for beauty, caught in just a brutal, brutal act.
It's such a stark reminder, isn't it,
Yeah.
of the dangers that still exist. And then May 7th, it felt like a direct, a really forceful answer.
Yeah, very forceful answer.
And this isn't just about, military tactics. It feels like it's about national resolve and maybe something even rarer these days, that kind of unity, at least a glimpse of it. And what's usually a very, let's say, energetic political scene in India.
Absolutely. And that's what we're diving into, isn't it? Operation Sindoor. We're trying to understand that whole chain reaction. What exactly sparked this response? How was it carried out with such, apparent precision?
Right.
And this unusual political alignment we saw afterwards. And then, of course, the ripples, the shockwaves that went out internationally. We've been looking at, all the immediate reports, the official statements, how the world reacted, just trying to piece together the core story so you get the essentials without getting lost in, endless jargon.
And that political consensus you mentioned, that really jumped out at me too. It really did. We're so used to the back and forth, the different viewpoints in India. It's vibrant, but to see this kind of, unified front after such a major military move, that's when I thought, okay, yeah, we need to unpack this. And it all starts, tragically, with what happened in Pahalgam.
That attack, it was particularly chilling. Pahalgam, late April. This wasn't just random violence. It felt very calculated. In Jammu and Kashmir, a place known for its beauty.
Yeah, stunning place.
And the targets, tourists, people who came for tranquility. The group claiming it, the resistance front, the TRF. Well, it's widely seen as a front, isn't it, for Lashkar-e-Taiba?
Basically, it's across the border.
Exactly, a group with deep ties there. But what made it so brutal, I think, was the way they singled people out. Reports described how attackers separated men and women.
Horrifying.
Specifically identified non-Muslims and then targeted them. The result, just devastating. 26 innocent people killed. Most were Indian tourists, but also, tragically, one Nepali citizen was among them.
It's just sending a clear message of hate, of division, and then the name India chose for the response, Operation Sindoor. That's not just a random code name, is it? There's a very powerful cultural meaning there.
Precisely. You think about Sindoor, that bright red vermilion powder. Married Hindu women often wear it in their hair parting. It's a really potent symbol, isn't it?
Marriage, yeah. Family, well-being.
Exactly. So by targeting non-Muslim men specifically, the attackers weren't just taking lives. They were, in a way, striking right at that cultural symbol, creating widows, disrupting families in a deeply symbolic manner.
So the operation's name itself becomes a counterstatement.
Right. When India chose Operation Sindoor, it felt like a very direct, very resonant response, a powerful statement about, protecting those very values, that sense of security.
So from that awful scene in Pahalgam, we fast forward to the night of May 6th, going into May 7th. Operation Sindoor begins. What do we understand about how it actually unfolded?
Well, the response was incredibly swift, coordinated too. In the very early hours, between about 1:05 a.m. and maybe 1:30 a.m., a full tri-service operation kicked off.
Tri-service, so Army, Navy, Air Force.
All three. Army, Navy, Air Force involved, which signals, a really unified, comprehensive approach. And what's quite interesting, according to several reports, is the level of oversight.
Oh.
There are suggestions that Prime Minister Modi himself was actually monitoring the operation directly in real time.
Wow.
And the targets were carefully chosen. 9 locations altogether. 4 of them were across the international border, actually in Pakistan proper, including Bahawalpur.
Bahawalpur, that name rings a bell.
Yeah.
Jaish-e-Mohammed, right?
Exactly. Intelligence has flagged it for a long time as a major hub for Jaish-e-Mohammed, the group behind so many earlier attacks. Then the other 5 targets were in Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, PoJK, including Meridke, which is infamous, really, as a central base, a training center for Lashkar-e-Taiba.
And the weapons they used.
Yeah.
This wasn't just dropping standard bombs, was it? I'm reading about some very specific high-tech munitions.
Absolutely. The operation used advanced precision-guided weapons, Specifically, reports mentioned Salkal-P cruise missiles and Hammer smart bombs launched from Rafale fighters. The Salkal-P, it's a long-range missile known for its accuracy, and the Hammer bombs are designed for very precise strikes against specific points.
So the goal was surgical strikes, essentially.
Exactly. It clearly signals they wanted to minimize collateral damage, to focus only on the identified terror infrastructure. And this is crucial. Every report stresses this. No Pakistani military sites, no civilian areas were hit. The message seems very clear. This was targeted counterterrorism, not a broader attack on the Pakistani state or its people.
Now, after something this significant, you'd expect, well, a lot of noise domestically. But the political reaction in India, it seemed to catch a lot of people off guard, didn't it? We usually see vigorous debate, shall we say.
We do.
This felt different.
It really was a notable moment. The day after the strikes, May 8th, the government acted quickly. They called an all-party meeting.
Right.
Defense Minister Rajnath Singh briefed leaders from right across the political spectrum. He told them that initial assessments suggested over 100 terrorists might have been neutralized.
Over 100. Wow.
Though he did add the caveat that these figures were still being verified, and he also made a very firm statement. Operation Sindoor wasn't necessarily over, it was ongoing, and any further escalation from Pakistan would be met decisively.
And the support from the opposition. It wasn't just like a quiet agreement, was it? Some really big names spoke out quite strongly.
That's right. Really key opposition figures. People like Rahul Gandhi and Mallikarjun Kharge from the Congress Party, often very critical of the government. They both voiced clear support for the action.
Gandhi even suggested a special session of parliament, I think.
He did, yeah, to show national unity. And it wasn't just Congress. Leaders from important regional parties, Trinamool Congress, DMK, even Asaduddin Owaisi of AIMM.
Owaisi? That is surprising. He's usually a very sharp critic on security matters.
Exactly. But he backed the strikes too. In fact, he went further, urging the UK and China and others to take action against the TRF.
That is quite the coalition of support. I remember the Parliamentary Affairs Minister, Kiran Rijiju, remarking on India's mature democracy at that moment. But you do have to wonder, don't you? Is this unity genuine and lasting, or is it more situational, tied to this specific event?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, while the immediate aftermath saw this, well, rather remarkable consensus, you have to look at the underlying political dynamics.
Sure.
In a country as diverse, as politically charged as India, that kind of sustained unity across the board is often, well, fleeting. This moment, while definitely significant, it projected this sense of national purpose. It could very well be temporary once the immediate sort of crisis feeling starts to fade.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But for that specific moment, it presented a really powerful image, a nation standing together against what was seen as a clear external threat.
Okay, let's dig a bit deeper into the strikes themselves. The reporting really emphasized the precision, the targeted nature. What more do we know about how they achieved that, or claimed to?
Well, the whole narrative around the operation was designed to showcase India's ability for these highly precise hits, right on what they see as the nerve centers of these groups, Jaish, Lashkar.
Right.
Reports started citing satellite imagery suggesting the damage was really contained within the known boundaries of these camps, these logistical hubs. No visible impact, apparently, on surrounding civilian buildings or any Pakistani military sites.
And the official language reflected that.
Very much so. Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri, in his statements, kept repeating the description. The strikes were measured, non-escalatory, proportionate, and responsible. It was all about framing it as a focused response, neutralizing a direct threat, not starting a war.
And India's diplomatic move, especially towards the U.S., seemed very quick, very deliberate.
Absolutely. Proactive. India's ambassador in the U.S., Vinay Quatra, took a very firm line in interviews. He essentially said Pakistan was standing with terrorists.
Strong words.
Very strong. And that Operation Sindoor was a direct, necessary consequence of Pahalgam. This was all part of a bigger diplomatic push, wasn't it? To frame India's actions purely in counterterrorism terms.
So, lots of briefings.
Reportedly, yes. Briefings with key allies, definitely the U.S., and National Security Advisor Ajit Doval apparently spoke directly with the U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. The message was consistent. India is acting against terror groups, not looking for a fight with Pakistan's military.
Unsurprisingly, though, Pakistan told a very different story. What were their main counterclaims?
Oh, completely different narrative. Their military spokesperson, Lieutenant General Ahmed Sharif Chaudhry, came out with a starkly contrasting account. They claimed the Indian strikes caused significant civilian deaths. They put the number at 31, at least.
Civilian deaths. And mosques?
Yes, they alleged that multiple mosques were hit, and they even claimed their forces shot down 5 Indian warplanes during the operation.
5 planes. That's a huge claim. Was there any verification?
Well, crucially, no. Those claims haven't been independently verified by major international news outlets like CNN. And the available satellite imagery, as we mentioned, doesn't seem to show widespread damage beyond those specific terror-linked sites. India, for its part, didn't even acknowledge Pakistan's claim about the downed aircraft. Just silence on that front.
Right. So, contrasting narratives, which is maybe not surprising, the broader international reaction, though, seemed to follow a pretty familiar script for this region. Calls for everyone to calm down.
Exactly. De-escalation was the main theme globally. President Trump in the U.S. called it a shame, hoped for a quick end. His administration actively called for de-escalation. Senator Rubio was talking to both sides.
That elsewhere?
China expressed regret, urged restraint. The UK's Trade Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, offered to mediate. The UAE's Deputy PM also called for de-escalation. Pretty standard playbook, really.
It is interesting, though. These calls for restraint, while they're aimed at both sides on paper, you kind of feel, given the history, they often carry a slightly different weight, perhaps aimed more pointedly.
That's a very shrewd point. Pakistan's history of responding to similar incidents, sometimes with quite significant escalatory moves, probably does influence how the international community phrases these calls.
Right.
There might be an implicit understanding of the, well, severe provocation that led to Operation Sindoor, even while they publicly call for calm from everyone.
Okay, let's turn back home to the reactions within India itself. It felt like a mix. On the one hand, this understandable surge of national pride, but maybe also underneath some anxiety.
That sounds like a fair reading. There was definitely a very visible wave of national pride. You saw prominent figures like cricket legend Sachin Tendulkar posting support online.
Yeah, I saw that. Other athletes, too.
Right, Virender Sehwag, Nikat Zareen. Others echoed that feeling. It felt like a moment where national solidarity kind of came together. But alongside that pride, there was undoubtedly some anxiety, especially for people with family in the military or those living near the border. The story of Rajni Shah really brought that home, didn't it?
The pregnant wife of the BSF soldier already detained by Pakistan.
Exactly, hoping for his safe return, right in the middle of these heightened tensions. It really puts a human face on the stakes involved.
And then there was that rather odd, frankly quite bizarre incident with Reliance Industries trying to trademark Operation Sindoor.
Oh, yes, that caused quite a stir.
It didn't exactly play well, did it? Trying to trademark the name of a military operation for, what, entertainment purposes?
No, it did not go down well at all. There was a huge backlash online, in the media. People saw it as deeply insensitive, trying to, cash in on a very serious national event.
They pulled it back quickly, though.
They did. Reliance withdrew the application fast, called it an inadvertent filing. But yeah, it was a strange, kind of jarring moment amid everything else.
One aspect of the aftermath that I found really striking, maybe even symbolic, was the official media briefing after the operation. It was led by 2 women officers, wasn't it?
Yes. That felt very significant. A deliberate choice, surely. Colonel Sophia Qureshi from the Army and Wing Commander Vyomika Singh from the Air Force. They fronted the briefing.
And Colonel Qureshi is a Muslim officer, right?
She is, yes. And Wing Commander Singh is a highly decorated helicopter pilot. It sent such a strong message, didn't it, about the changing role of women in India's defense forces.
Absolutely.
And that this fight, the fight against terrorism, it's a national effort. It cuts across gender, religion, everything. We even heard Colonel Qureshi's twin sister talking about how proud she was seeing her brief the nation.
That's wonderful. And Wing Commander Singh.
A first-generation officer, apparently. Strong engineering background. Really represents the modern, highly skilled face of the Indian military.
It really does highlight a major shift, a powerful statement about inclusion, about capability. So let's step back again, look at the bigger picture. Does Operation Sindoor mark a real change, maybe a more permanent shift in how India approaches counterterrorism?
It certainly feels like a continuation, maybe even an intensification of a trend we saw start after Pulwama in 2019, with the Balakot airstrikes.
Right, hitting back across the border.
Exactly. The underlying strategy seems to be this willingness now to directly target terror infrastructure right at its source. Even across international lines in response to major attacks, this operation hit key spots deep inside Pakistan and PoJK, places known to be central to these groups' abilities to operate.
So the message is?
The message seems to be that Pakistan's long-standing tactic, using terrorism as a sort of low-cost warfare tool, will now be met with direct, forceful consequences, regardless of their nuclear deterrent.
But that kind of assertive action,
Yeah.
it naturally carries huge risks, doesn't it? The potential for escalation must be massive.
Absolutely massive. The situation is still incredibly tense, incredibly volatile. We've already seen reports of Pakistan retaliating with shelling along the line of control.
And drone attacks.
Yeah.
Missile attempts.
Yes, reports of attempted drone and missile attacks, too. Thankfully intercepted, it seems, by India's air defense systems, including the S-400, but it shows how quickly things could spiral.
So India's diplomatic game is key here.
Crucial. Being very clear we're only hitting terror targets and briefing allies proactively. That's all designed to try and manage the fallout, to prevent a wider international backlash. But the risk of miscalculation, further escalation, it's very, very real. And at the same time, domestically, the investigation into Pahalgam continues, and the government is trying hard to prevent anyone from exploiting the situation to stir up communal trouble inside India. That's another critical piece.
So bringing us right up to today, May 9th, 2025. What's the state of play? Still feels very much on edge.
Definitely still on edge. Tensions are high. Pakistan's prime minister has publicly vowed a resolute response. Their military has used artillery, drones.
And India's stance?
Measured but firm. The armed forces are actively countering threats, neutralizing them. But the government keeps urging Pakistan to de-escalate. Foreign Secretary Misri's line really sums it up. The original escalation was the Pahalgam attack. We only responded. That's India's position, very clearly stated.
And those international calls for restraint we talked about, they must feel like a double-edged sword for India right now.
They really are. On one hand, they might give India a bit of diplomatic cover, maybe slow things down, but they also put pressure on both sides to hold back, which could potentially limit India's options if there are more provocations from across the border.
Mediation offers are on the table, I suppose.
Yes, from the US, UK, UAE. But historically, India and Pakistan tend to prefer handling things bilaterally, right? You look back at the Simla Agreement, the Lahore Declaration.
True. So India's focus now is?
Seems to be threefold. Maintain a very high level of military readiness, keep that domestic unity solid, which is why the opposition's support is so important right now, and keep diplomatic channels open, even if it's difficult.
And crucially, avoid political point scoring that could break that unity.
Absolutely vital. And we have to keep remembering the human stories in all this. Families like Rajani Shah's, they're living the real-world consequences of these huge geopolitical shifts.
Operation Sindoor, it's undoubtedly a powerful response to a truly horrific act of terror, a moment of, well, unexpected national unity, and a clear signpost in India's evolving counter-terror strategy. It's a lot to take in.
It really is. Pahalgam was such a brutal reminder of the threat. Operation Sindoor was the immediate, forceful answer. It showed military precision, national resolve, and that surprising political cohesion, even if it might be fragile. But those international reactions just highlight the incredibly fine line India has to walk now.
As we think about all this, it really throws into sharp relief that incredibly complex balance, doesn't it? Between a nation's right, its need to act decisively for its security, and the absolute necessity preventing things from spiraling out of control in such a volatile region.
What are the long-term consequences here? For stability, for counterterrorism efforts globally? It feels like we're right in the thick of a story that's far from over.
Exactly. Operation Sindoor has definitely shifted the dynamic in the region. Its lasting impact really depends on what happens next, on the choices both India and Pakistan make from this point. For India, maintaining that internal unity, staying vigilant, and pursuing a clear, consistent diplomatic path that seems absolutely crucial for navigating towards a stronger, safer future.